Here we'll try to configure always availability on two nodes from the DC servers. We'll try to configure on node 1 and node 2 easily. So before we configure, we'll try and check whether the nodes are communicating to each other or not. So we'll try check with the ping 110. This is a node 1 IP. It's for node 2, which means communicating. NS lookup as well, both need to be communicated. Okay, so the communication between the DC and nodes as well completely working fine. Here also we'll try and check. Sorry, 110 is the same one, right? 112 is not 2. And 109 is the DC one. Windows 19 DC. Not 2. Okay, so hopefully here also it pings properly. Cool. Then the first thing we need to make sure that in the configuration, MySQL Server Configuration Manager, we need to enable the always on availability. This would be the first step. In the availability group, it is already enabled. After you apply and OK, you need to restart the SQL Server. Okay, so I have already done it. Here as well, you need to enable that feature. Always availability. Enable. Okay. So coming to the DC part, we'll try and connect to the node 1. Let's check. We have one database. We'll try and create one more database. So before configuring, we are supposed to take in full backup for a database. Only then that could add in the AG group. Try to use the compress in case if the database is more than 500 GB or kind of. Cool. So now here we cannot say anything. So once we right click and click on new wizard, this is supposed to be open. If you're not enabling this in the configuration manager, this feature won't be active. It won't be shown. So only after enabling we can see always availability configuration. First we'll give the availability group name. Tester. Windows failover cluster. We are supposed to failover to node 2 from node 1. Database health detection. This is for it will detect whether the current node is active or it is unhealthy. In case if it is unhealthy, it will fail over to node 2 automatic. This also for some reason meets prerequisites. See, after we take the full backup for the EFG, ABCD is already been taken. We have taken the newly created database, so that's the reason we can see the meets prerequisites. Then let's check the two databases. Next, specify replica. So this tab is important where we mostly configure all the required things. So the first thing here we'll add the replica before we do anything. So here we'll select the node 2. I think it got stuck. I have very less resources, so that's the reason it is taking much time to add the new replica into the configuration. Uh, Let me pause the video for a second. Okay, it has added. So the node 1 is the primary and node 2 is the secondary. Okay, we cannot change this one since we are configuring this on the node 1. The node 1 we can see it as a primary. The node 1. Node 2 is we added as a secondary. Okay. So here in the replicas we have added an additional replica for the failover, and here we put the automatic for the both. And see, as we put it will change from asynchronous to synchronous. Asynchronous is a manual failover we are supposed to do. So we'll check automatic failover, and to failover a node, to failover a cluster we need at least two conditions. One, the cluster need to be on a synchronous, and it should be failover. Automatic failover should be enabled. Both need to be enabled. So here for second we'll keep for the read only S, and for the primary it does not read, anything is fine. It will always take the default thing, read and write permissions we have on the node 1. And here read intent only is when especially some read permission is given to a user, only those people can able to connect to this cluster node to cluster, and they can read the data. If not, if we give yes, then any user can connect and he can read the data. So let's move on to the endpoint. As we know, for always availability, the port is 5022, where endpoint we call it the data transfer and connections is established through this port. Just like how for the SQL Server we have 1433, and yeah, we have a service account DB SQLs. Nothing to make changes here. Backup preference is defaultly it will be preferred secondary. This one is whenever we set up some automatic tasks, automatic jobs on primary. So during that time, those resources for the usage of those jobs can be utilized from the node 2. Okay, whenever we are taking the manual backups or differential backups, that will be stored, and it will be in the node 1. So for the listeners, we'll have to create listener as well. So I won't create listener here. I'll create listener later because through GUI my listener is not configuring for some reason. So yeah, we can just create the replicas. Easy setup. We didn't see the next option. Okay, it is asking me to create the listener. Let's create one dummy. And for the port for the listener should be given on the node 1. What is the node 1 port? In the TCP IP, we usually know 1433 is the default, but here we need to check what exactly the port is being there. Here, as we can see, the static port is 1425. Okay, and for the node 2 also, we'll check. Both should run on the same ports, 1425, and the same port is given in the listener. If not, it won't communicate. 1425 here as well, right? So we'll give 1425. And we'll put the static. Always this will be the port. If we choose the dynamic, then it will auto assign its own port. So here we'll click on add. It will again ask to give a new IP address for the listener. If listener should work, it should have a new IP address. So this IP we can give anything 192.168.1.1. This will be the common. The last one will be anything like 120. And before we give, we need to make sure we check this 120 IP should not be assigned to anyone. So for ping 120, it should reject the connection, or it should not establish unreachable. So only then we can assign that IP to here so that it could work on that IP. 120, right? Okay. As I said, my listener is not configuring, so I have to create that listener using the query. We'll do it later. Automatic seeding I'm choosing. We can choose other as well, but the join only is mostly used in the real time, wherein in case if the database is more than like 100 GB or 500 GB, what happens here is we are supposed to take the backup of that database using the backup command in the node 1, and then we need to copy that compressed backup file to target server, I mean node 2, I mean cluster 2, and then in the cluster we need to restore um, using again restore command, and at that time we are supposed to use the join only, so that that database restored database on the cluster 2 will be joined to availability group. So that is how we use it. So for this is also similar, and auto seeding is it will automatically take the backup in the primary, it will copy to the secondary, and it will restore in the secondary node, and then it will join the database automatically to the availability group. So everything is taken care by automatic seeding. So we'll try and check and validate. Checking the selected databases already exist on the server instance. So they are saying there is an already database exist. So we'll try and delete the database in case it's already been there in the node 2. We need to drop if they are already exist. See, there is an we'll try and delete. If it won't delete, then we'll bring that online and we'll delete. It's deleted. Cool. So we need to previous. Let's move on to the previous steps. Can we move 120? Okay, I think now let's reconfigure. So this is the validation we need to check on. True, false. Okay, automatic seeding, replicas, manual. Failover is readable secondary, no. Failover mode manual. Okay, we'll click on finish. Okay, the listener also been created. Sometimes it's get created, sometimes it won't. Let's check here. Availability group, let's expand in the node 1. Replicas, we'll see secondary is added, active, databases, both are fine. Listener is fine. We can check the listener properties as well. 1425 cool. And let's check this same thing on the node 2. This is important. Let's refresh the database here. Okay, we got the two databases in synchronous mode, and replicas were added. Node 1 is primary, as you can see, node 2 is secondary. Both database, everything seems fine. It is automatically added as we selected the auto seeding during the configuration. As you can see, the databases were already been added. Since we have very 16 MB of database, we can do it through auto seeding. In case in real time, we'll have 500 GB, 1 TB, 2 TB of databases. For that, we cannot select the auto seeding. We have to manually bring the database over here, and then we need to add that to AG. Okay. So now in the node 1, we'll check this in. So now, to monitor this availability, there is a cluster which we have already installed on the node 1 and node 2 through the service manager, I guess. So this is the cluster failover manager, failover cluster manager. From the service manager, we are supposed to install it, server manager. From here, in the node 1 and node 2, the failover cluster manager is supposed to be installed. From the add roles and feature, it is available. So let's open the failover cluster manager. It is like an SSMS tool where we can operate the cluster. We can see how many replicas were added to the cluster and how failover is working in it. Okay. So this is the failover cluster manager. In this, we have from here we are supposed to operate the cluster. Okay, so we have roles, we have nodes. The nodes, whatever the replicas we have added, we can see here node 1 and node 2 both were approved. Okay, and the role is very important for the cluster. Role should also be on running. Mostly this will fail, and due to some issues, if in case if node is suddenly turned off, then it will go into restoring state. So such issues will occur. We have to make sure nodes roles should be active, and in this is the cluster. Okay, this is the entire cluster information which we can see. Windows 90 cluster db.com. Okay, it runs on the IP address IPv4, and which is hosting this node 1. It is a network it is following up. And if you come down here, we can see the cluster resources. This cluster have resources, and the resources were 112 is what this cluster is working on. So while creating this cluster, we will be created by Windows team. When Windows failover cluster they are supposed to be creating, during that time they will give the IP address for cluster as well. Just like how we give IP for listener, they will give IP for cluster to make it work. So this name, cluster name and IP address both should also be online. So to work AG, we have to make sure cluster resources should be online, role should be online, nodes should be online. Coming to the storage, this is for maybe for HCI it is used, the failover cluster instance. And network level, we have more information regarding the network and events. If anything is failure, the error message will be seen here. Okay, so now we can do the failover, and in different ways we can do the failover by moving the role. Also we can do So we'll open in a dashboard here on the AG. This is the AG we have. Show dashboard. We can see the node 1 as primary and node 2 as secondary. As you can see, node 1 is active, node 2 is also active, but the primary is node 1 and secondary is in the second place. Okay, healthy, everything is fine as you can see here. So now to failover, we'll just need to right click over here and we have a failover option. Okay, the fifth option would be, and again new dialog box open, we'll click on next, select the new replica. If we have multiple replicas, we are supposed to select which replica we are trying to fail over. Since I have only 2 nodes, it's completely fine. Click on next. We have one more option, no data loss. Okay, click on next. Secondary, connected, it's not connected. Let's ask for the credentials to be logged in. Already been taken, connect. Okay, now we can see the DB service account over here. Click on next. Verify the choice made wizard validation and then finish. Okay. Now if you see the dashboard or on the database, um, the node 2 will be primary and the node 1 will be the secondary. Mostly we can see the secondary on node 1. Primary won't be visible. Successful. Let's close and let's see here. Because right, let's expand this. As you can see, the node 1 is secondary. Okay, node 1 is secondary and the node 2 is primary, which means so. Okay, so here also if we open a new dashboard, so here node 2 would be the primary instance would be node 2 as we can see, and here the secondary node 1 will be the secondary which is ready to fail over. Okay, and if we check the database states, okay, if we check the database states, they were also healthy, and we'll check the databases in node 2 as well. Yeah, it is already been synchronized as we can see. Here also is synchronized. And the other way to failover is, as I told, we have the nodes over here. So in these nodes also we will be having the move option. If this role is actually situated on the node 1, the cluster 1, so we can move that to the cluster 2 by choosing best possible node. Once we select the best possible node, then here you see it is changed to node 2 to node 1 just now. Okay, then in the DC level also we can see it has shifted to primary node 1 cluster as you can see, the node 1 is secondary, node 1 will be primary now once I refresh. So role has moved to primary as you can see. So when we move the node, we can also see the failover takes place. So this is how we do failover. So in case if the node 2 is down, somehow if we have changed the internet settings is gone, or if the disk is not available in the node 2, then immediately the node 1 failover will happen to node 1. and the databases will be available in the node. Okay, so apart from that, as we can see, the role can be moved, and also here this is for the resource. In the cluster level, in the more actions, we can also move the cluster resource as well, just like how we move the role. But when you move the cluster resource, here the host owner will be changed. It won't fail over, but the cluster owner will be changed. As of now, the cluster owner is node 2. Okay, we will try to move the resources. Action, move cluster resource best possible node. As you can see, pending, it is getting, status is getting restarted. Okay, once you come up, the node 1 will be the owner here. See the node 1. So the owner of the cluster will change if we move the resource, cluster resource. If we move the role, then the failover will happen from node 1 to node 2. And these are the nodes. So whenever we come across any issue, we have to monitor all these three things. Cluster, first cluster is active or not, and the node is active or not, or and the roles role is active or not. Okay, and we have another concept also called as a quorum. Quorum for two nodes we also need the quorum, but for multiple nodes we also need the quorum. That is like maybe it is also been configured. Quorum is nothing but it's kind of a voting system. When we have multiple nodes, the cluster will decide which node it need to fail over. So the internally what it does is like it will it does some small kind of election inside. It will try and choose a best node based on the votes which is received to that node. And once it is selected, then the cluster will be failed over to that particular node. So here we'll try and set up the one of the quorum with start. Okay, we'll click on next advanced quorum configuration. Select nodes. On these nodes, on all these nodes, we are trying to create a quorum and then file not configured quorum witness. So this is one component which you are trying to create here. Configure a file share witness. File share witness. So this is one folder which is created by the cluster within the C drive of DC domain. On DC domain, we are supposed to create a folder. In that, it will try and put some things which is helps cluster to choose during the failover. Okay. So we'll click the next one, and in that folder path we need to give over here. So we'll try and think. Let me check. Do we have already? I think I already created, but let me check again. Yeah, already I have I have created. Let's go to properties, sharing. This network path we are supposed to give it here. Click on OK. Let's check inside. There should be nothing. Yeah, there's nothing here. Once we create the something will be created inside. We'll click on next. Next. Finish. Let's check here if I see, as we can see in the file, a depth file is created. Okay, so this will communicate with the cluster during the failover, and it will give a best voting to failover to the healthy node. Okay, so like that we have supposed to configure. We can check this status of the quorum with the PowerShell and the command prompt as well. Whenever we come across the issues on the SQL Server, we'll check all these things, and in worst case we also check the quorum configuration as well. If there is an issue, in case if that is also not working, then we'll have to check the SQL services are running or not, agent services. If that is also not working, then eventually we are supposed to restart the SQL Server services on the node. So that is how we set up the AG. It's a sample lab testing machines I have configured. Okay. Yeah, thank you.